Hello, everyone. Here is another authentic conversation, and I'm glad you're here tuning in from wherever you are in the world. A little bit about myself, Adele Bernard, and Transition Clarity, my company, is we primarily work with the men, but it's all about awakening to the true potential of who you are by releasing the belief systems, the conditionings, the untruths that you've been told you are and you're not. Right now, I'm running a program about the boy behind the man. And this is about, were you a Superman, a Batman, a Robin, or did you want to be Tinkerbell? All is good. It's who are you here to be once you let go of the conditionings, the have tos, the must, the, you know, all of that stuff that we get caught up in this life with. And I can be followed on Facebook, Instagram, or at the company bit.ly dot transition clarity with a capital T, capital C. And now I want to introduce our guest today. Her name is Carla Wainwright, a holistic wellness coach, sexual awakening facilitator, and a midlife alchemist. She supports women 40 plus to reclaim vitality, balance their hormones, and reconnect with the pleasure of power through the blend of metabolic health, nervous system healing, and sexual embodiment. With a background in biology, homeopathy, and over 2 decades of experience in the healing arts, Carla bridges the science of the body with the sacredness of lived experience. Her work helps women shift from surviving to thriving by listening to the body's signals, reawakening desires, and embracing midlife as a powerful rite of passage. What she wants you to know the most is to know that they don't need to be fixed to feel better. Many of the challenges women experience in midlife are intelligent signals from their body asking for a different pace, a different support, and a deeper relationship within themselves. Her work is about listening, responding, and learning how to thrive from the inside out. And with that, I am happy to welcome Carla to the show. Okay, Carla Wainwright, welcome to Authentic Conversations.
Oh, I'm really happy to be here, Adele. Thank you.
All right. So, the famous question that we always start off with. I read your bio, all good, but tell us in your own words, how did you become Carla today
Hmm.
from before? Like, what is the transitions that brought you through to what you do now?
Yeah, well, there have been lots of transitions. I started as a young person, I studied biology and conservation biology
Mm-hmm.
in university. And even did some work in Africa, working on endangered species management and wildlife as a resource. And then I came back to Canada and was doing endangered species work, and I did that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But concurrently to that, I really started to go into a healing journey of my own to heal sexual trauma that I'd experienced, and was really struggling with a lot of the after effects of that. My nervous system was super dysregulated. I just had so much anxiety. My body was numb all the time. And so, on the one hand, I was working and doing all of the things. And on the other hand, I just was really struggling day to day. Lots of anxiety attacks, panic attacks, and all of those sorts of things. So I started on this healing journey because I really actually wasn't getting the right kind of support that I needed from the mainstream medical system, which you've probably heard once or twice before. And interestingly, one of the first things that really kind of blew my mind open is I had visited a health food store in Prince George here. And the woman, that store doesn't exist anymore, but the woman who owned it at the time was doing her practicum in homeopathy. I had no idea what homeopathy was. And she said, I need some, test patients to work on my practicum. Will you do this? And I'm like, oh, sure, sounds good. I have no idea what this is, but, I tend to be kind of dive right in. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'll try it. Anyway, she gave me a remedy. And she didn't just give me a remedy. She of course did a consultation, etc. And based on what I said, she gave me this remedy. I took this remedy, and I ended up having actually a massive healing reaction to it, to these three little, seemingly sugar pellets that I had taken. And the healing reaction was really was quite profound. And after that, one of the side effects of having the sexual trauma is that I had continual bladder infections. And after that, all my bladder infections cleared up. And I was like, well, wait a second. What just happened here? I had no clue what happened, but it made me very curious. So that was kind of this opening into seeing the world in an entirely different way. Because I had studied science and I considered myself a scientist, I was sort of very rational and not totally mean. I've never been mainstream, but I kind of followed the scientific method. And here I took something that kind of defied Western thought of science, like the
Mm-hmm.
understanding of science, and it made me really curious. I also was doing yoga at the time just to try to relax my body and also had these profound experiences. So, in any case, it started me on this path of moving more into the healing arts and the esoteric arts. And as I began to heal my body, I wanted to study that and become certified in that so I could help others. And so for a long time, I kind of did this dual path. I did the biology bit because that's how I made a living. I was doing the more esoteric healing arts at the same time because that started to become my passion. And then eventually, like for many people, you kind of have to make a choice.
Yeah.
It's hard to do all the things. And I just really felt like my heart wasn't, as much as I'm so passionate about nature and the environment and wildlife, I didn't feel like I actually was affecting a lot of change in the work that I was doing
Mm-hmm.
as a biologist. And I felt that I had much more of an impact doing the healing work. And so I just continued to move along that path, and that led me to studying Tantra. It led me to studying all of these different healing modalities. And so, kind of fast forward to the last decade, I'd say, is I feel like there's been this really beautiful coming, full circle because I've reintegrated a lot of my early biological training into the work that I do now,
Yeah.
because I think there's also a lot of there's so much power in both methodologies, right? And bringing them
Yeah.
together in a really integrated way. So I'm grateful for my science background because I'm able to pull in aspects around health, particularly metabolic health, but also the energy pieces, also the somatic pieces, the healing pieces that I think are equally as important. So that's really where I've arrived to today. There's no accidents. Everything has led me to this moment of where I'm at.
Well, and I think it's just fascinating how just a simple question of, do you want to help me in my practicum?
Yeah.
Right? Like you're just like, "Oh, sure. Like and yet it's such a huge doorway of
Mhm.
opening to a whole different path that you didn't know you're looking for.
That's right.
Right? And that's I get goosebumps with that because it's like um on the last podcast I just recorded, it was like we if we took out one stone or one decision or we wouldn't be where we are today,
Yeah.
right? And and how do three little so-called sugar pills, little balls, take away bladder infections,
I know.
right? Like, do you know as a biologist, like, have you figured out how that
Well, so
works?
if we, without going down that rabbit hole too much, but of course, homeopathic remedies, what's so fascinating about it, it is energetic medicine, because the more dilute the remedy, the more powerful it is.
Yeah,
So it doesn't make sense to our kind of rational, logical
yeah.
minds, but that is how the energy medicine works. And so, scientists would say, well, it's so dilute that there's nothing there, but clearly there is something there. And I think that that's part of like the arrogance and hubris of science, is it thinks like we know everything and we're at the pinnacle
Hmm.
of knowledge. And I mean, we really know nothing.
Nothing.
you know we know something, but it's such a small amount in terms of what is out there in terms of our knowing and understanding. And I think that's really exciting. So no, we can't really describe it or explain it, but it does work. So I'm okay with that explanation, because I think that we don't have to actually explain everything. We just have to, if we experience something, that's valid, right?
Well,
That's enough.
and because you have the science background, it just makes it this question more intriguing to me because Western medicine says, oh, well, you're on this medication and it's not working. So we'll double it up. Well, if it's not working in the first place, why are you doing more?
Yeah.
Right? And homeopathy says, "Oh, we gave you 3. That's too many. Let's give you 1."
Yeah.
Right? And yeah, like I we need it all. I'm not saying one's better than the other. It's just stay open,
That's right.
right? And that's the biggest thing. So what have you found in your journey now on this new path with homeopathy and helping women with the trauma and even bringing in the tantra? Like, let's just open it up. Like, tell me more.
So, so I work with women in a variety of different ways. So even though I did study to become a homeopath, and I actually studied Hahnemann, who was the founder of homeopathy, I studied his entire medical system,
Hmm.
which is called Heilkunst. It's not something that I necessarily actively practice anymore, although I do offer homeopathic remedies to my clients as needed.
Hmm.
My work now is really often in kind of two spheres which often overlap. So the Tantra really comes more into the embodiment piece. So for
Hmm.
women who are really struggling with their desire, their sexual desire, or just being able to feel their bodies
Hmm.
and just feeling numb and dissociated a lot of the time. They might be struggling in their relationships, might be struggling in work. They just don't perhaps have a clarity about what their next steps are or who they want to be. So the women I work with are typically 40 plus and are
Yeah.
really on this threshold of coming into themselves more fully, but sometimes that's not really clear.
Yeah.
And then the other piece of that is really supporting women in their lifestyle and their metabolic health. And they're not separate, right? Because what how we take care of our bodies, and having a body that is functioning as optimally as possible, means that all of our endocrine system, our hormones, our blood sugar, our cortisol response, our adrenal glands, all of those things are functioning in such a way that we can be really attuned to our bodies, that we can experience pleasure and desire, that we
Hmm.
can really have a clear mind and know what's coming next. So they're not separate, but
Hmm.
sometimes it depends where someone is at in terms of where we move first, and then where we go. And there's so many really powerful teachings and lessons and knowledge in all of these different modalities that I feel really blessed that I have a curious mind and have studied so many different things, because you're able to bring those together in ways that are really unique to the individual, because every person is an individual.
Yeah. So how much is the unknowing for the women? and understanding that there's desires and getting in touch with their bodies have you found to be coming from the trauma of sexual abuse or sexual
Oh,
trauma?
well, I mean, without a doubt that any type of trauma has a massive impact on a woman's body and her capacity to just feel safe within herself.
Hmm.
And so sometimes it's not just sexual trauma. It could be trauma of any kind. It could be just a difficult upbringing where her voice wasn't valued.
Hmm.
Um, you know, conditioning societally about just your emotions are not worthwhile, or there's so many different
Hmm.
aspects to that. And one of the defense mechanisms that the body has is really to protect itself, is to dissociate, is to go into numbness,
Hmm.
because feeling doesn't feel okay. And so that really becomes like kind of the way that many women operate and move through the world, is just with various levels of numbness, and it's a form of protection. And while that protection had its use, I'm generalizing here because
Yeah.
every situation is different, but um, that protection had its use perhaps at one time, but it is not supportive for a woman to move through her entire life feeling numb and dissociated. So there really comes a point where she wants something different, but doesn't really have the roadmap of how to get there.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully we're giving them the roadmap that their feelings are worthy of being shared, their voice is worthy of being heard. And worthiness is I think the human condition that
Mm-hmm.
we're all working through, right? If there's one
Absolutely.
condition we had, it's worth, you know.
Yes. And I think that it's almost universal that there is a subconscious belief that we're not enough, that we're not worthy.
Yeah.
So I think that people are surprised to hear that, but I mean, I counter that over and over and over again. And I've had to work through that as well.
Yeah. But then I've come to the conclusion that I'm worthy because I'm here,
Yeah.
right? I didn't say I started here. I just said I've worked through it to I'm worthy because I'm here,
Yeah.
right? And and God doesn't make any junk,
Yeah.
right? And more importantly, like whether you believe in past lives or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's we were chosen to be here at this time, right? To work through the trauma, to get healed, to come into compassion and loving and oneness and unity. And so, yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I keep going on this podcast because every time I think, no, I'm going to stop, I don't want to do it anymore, my inbox fills up. And I'm like, okay, I'm not stopping. Here
I'm
comes,
listening.
now we're in season 3. Thank you. I'm listening. Um, but more importantly, I want to go back to um, the like bladder infections are so common to women.
Mhm.
How much is it because we can't have our voice, because we've been traumatized, because, like, have you found any correlation or, like, and maybe you don't even know the answer? It's just this question that,
Sure.
hmm,
So, in my experience, the bladder is one of the places that we hold on to unprocessed rage. And so, I mean, we literally have this saying, I'm pissed off,
I know.
right? So, um, and like language is there, like these sayings have energy and meaning behind them. We
Hmm.
often don't even make the association, but if we pause, it's like, oh, right, okay, I'm pissed off.
Yeah.
So, and I would say that anger is one of those emotions that women really struggle with. And, in our culture, overall, women are not encouraged to really be angry. Like an angry woman is often made to feel shameful or
Yep.
scorned in some way, even though we have a lot to be angry about. Men are able to express their anger in much more healthy ways, and also lots of unhealthy ways, of course. But anger is a tough one for women. Like, we often will be more in touch with our sadness, our grief, our fear, but
Hmm.
anger can be really difficult. And it can often feel not safe to really, like, to get really angry, to be in a rage can be a pretty scary place, if you haven't really anchored into that.
Yeah.
So even just being like in it, it's like, whoa, this is terrifying, and then it often gets repressed. So the bladder will often hold on to that rage, and so particularly for women who've experienced sexual trauma, of course, understandably, there is a lot of rage,
Yep.
and that gets held in the bladder, which then manifests as an irritation and infections, and on and on and on. So, you know, the of course, like in my particular instance, and I don't want to say that everyone can just take a homeopathic remedy and suddenly their bladder infections will go away. Like, I think there was this perfect convergence at the time, and there was a lesson I needed to learn, and it was helping to direct me on my path. Like, I believe that that was
Hmm.
laid out for me in a particular way, and everybody's journey, of course, will be unique. And so while homeopathy, something like homeopathy, can be extraordinarily helpful, I think that creating a relationship with anger and finding safe ways to express that anger and learning how to express it and not hold it in the body
Hmm.
is really, really important. I mean, all emotions need to be felt and alchemized and moved through, because otherwise they just reside in the body. It's just energy that hasn't had a chance to be expressed. And this is what leads to all kinds of conditions
Hmm.
and suffering, because we don't allow ourselves to just really feel emotions when they need to be felt and moved through.
Well, yeah, and I mean, um, even in my own life, I had a bit of anger decide to come up, and I'm like, um, but and even knowing what I know, I caught myself that I was shaming myself, and I was like, well, that's just a circle I'm not entertaining, right? Obviously, it came up because it needed to. I pushed it down for so long, and then yeah, like I cut it right off at the pass because I'm like, there's no way I'm being shamed for showing emotions,
Yeah.
regardless of how violent they were.
So you had the awareness to do that, but for
Well, that's what
many
I'm saying. Like I've been
many
doing
women
this work
don't
my whole life,
don't even notice that. Yeah. Yeah, and
right?
that's powerful, right? It's like, well,
Yeah,
wait a second, actually I'm seeing a behavior pattern now, and I'm not
yeah,
moving into that.
and I was kind of taken back by going, yeah, could I have handled it differently if I was grounded and centered and sure. But when that anger or that um frustration or whatever emotion, sadness, crying, like it whatever emotion comes up, right? Because we all have a different emotion. Like an earth would probably go inward, like an air just, goes spinny. Like I'm a fire, so I blow, right? Like we all have our ways of letting go, and it's more important that you let it go
Hmm.
than it is to worry about how it's affecting others, who's around, right? Because if you don't let it go, and yeah, I mean, like it's better to let it go in a healthy way, right? Than just like someone saying hi to you and you blow up at them. Like, not really, right? That, but it's also catch the tail end of you're not shaming yourself. You're not saying how bad a person are you. Like, I must be broken. Like, all that garbage to stop that before that all happens,
Yeah.
you know? Because, especially for women, we've suppressed so much that I'm surprised we haven't blown more,
Yeah, I agree.
right? And
Yeah.
and I'm not saying it's the men in our lives that are treating us badly or doing this to us or whatever. It's just the way we've been told to be brought up,
Hmm.
you know? And the more we can talk and the more we can get it out and the more we can bring in healing circles for men and women, the better we're all going to be. And that's what I'm excited about for 2026 is we've come through the garbage and the letting go of 2025, right? And now we can come into the healing of 2026, the unison, the compassion,
Mm.
right? Because we don't know what's going on in anyone's life, really. We're not living in their life. And even if we're witness to their life, we don't know what internally is going on. And so
Of
that's
course not.
where it's like really interesting, like even working with animals and stuff. Like they can't tell us, well, my back leg hurts, right? We have to let go of the mind and listen to their heart so we can feel where they're hurting, what they're trying to say, because they sure do it for us, right?
They absolutely do.
So, um, so when you say like that you're not really using homeopathy for your clients now, what are you working with? Like, what do you do more now?
Hmm. So, I'm working as a coach. And
Okay.
like I said, I'm doing the embodiment piece. So sometimes that is more around sexual awakening, reviving sexual energy in the body, connecting deeply with sensation, learning how to move out of numbness and into your full pleasure capacity. And sometimes it's focusing more on really supporting someone to be much more metabolically healthy, to navigate the perimenopausal and menopausal journey with fewer symptoms and with a view forward of longevity and vibrancy and vitality. And like I said, they often mix together. And then sometimes I do group programs and then of course retreats.
Hmm.
And it's just, and when I say I'm not really doing homeopathy, I'm just not seeing people like strictly as a homeopath
Oh
anymore.
yeah.
But I would
Okay.
say that everything we do informs everything we do, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that it's out of the picture, but I just don't kind of hang my shingle up in that way and just see people strictly as a homeopath.
Yeah. No, that makes sense because it's like I say, well, I primarily work with men, but if women show up, I'm not going to turn them away. Okay.
Sure.
Right? Like, you know, um, okay. No, that makes sense because you sometimes you need to balance everything. You have to use everything in your toolbox, right? And so are you finding with the women you're working with that menopause is getting harder?
Um, yes, I would say that it absolutely is getting harder.
Okay.
And I think that's for a number of different reasons. So I think one of the primary, well, there's a couple primary reasons. The first, I think, is that the, the modern life that we live is enormously stressful. And there's a huge biological mismatch between the way our bodies evolved and how we were supposed to basically experience a moment of stress, and then that stress would be over, and then we would regulate and we'd get back on with things. But the way that our lives are now is that we are under an assault of continual, not only acute stress, but chronic stress.
Mm-hmm.
And our bodies didn't really evolve to be able to manage that effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So, stress is one of the big reasons that women really struggle in their perimenopausal and menopausal journey because it has such a huge impact on hormones. It has such a huge impact on our insulin, our
Mm-hmm.
blood glucose sensitivity, and then, of course, also our thyroid as well. So that's one reason. And then the second reason, too, is sad to say, but our world is extraordinarily toxic. And there's also an assault, again, on our biology from all of these toxins in our environment, whether it's the food that we eat and all the chemicals and the glyphosate and things that are sprayed on our food, to all of the beauty products and the household cleaners and the Teflon pans and the stuff in the air. And so it's very difficult for our bodies to kind of navigate through all of that. And again, it puts so much pressure on our biological systems that what should be a transition that may have a few waves becomes super stormy.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly, there's other factors as well, but I would say like stress and toxins are two of the primary reasons that I think it's much more difficult than it was, even then for our mothers, let's say, or our grandmothers.
Well, I've been blessed to not go through it, but I did see my mom go through it, and I was just like, that seemed horrible. And so I have compassion for women going through it. I don't know why I've been blessed that I didn't go through it, but I'm like, count your blessings. Um, and do you see that we're going to be able to turn this around? Like, because so many people have thyroid issues, have, the menopause. Like, do you see that we're going to be able to? Because I mean, we can't make them not poison our food, but can we do something in our own little world and our own little bodies
Mm-hmm.
to, I mean, yeah, like I know there's lots of research and stuff saying just turn off your phone, turn off all electronics more around the day, right? Like don't use lights, use a candle rather, like um so what's your thoughts on that?
I think that there's so much that we can do to
Mhm.
support our bodies. I actually I'm working with a client who, even just in a few months of making small, incrementable, doable changes, not having candles in your house at night, because it's like probably for 99.9% of people that would not be something that they're going to actually do, although it's a good idea. And she's turning 50 this year, and she says she hasn't felt this good in years. So I do want to give women hope that we can make changes that can have a huge impact, but we
Mhm.
have to have the desire to make those changes. And I think we know a lot now. Of course, we're going to keep uncovering more, but I do think that women have to start taking their health a whole lot more seriously. And, there's some really, to me, very upsetting statistics. Like 1 in 5 women is at risk for dementia. 80% of all
Why
autoimmune
is
disorders
that?
are women. Well, dementia is like often called diabetes type 3, right?
Right.
So it's a blood sugar thing. It's that we are eating too much processed food. We are eating too frequently. We are on this blood sugar roller coaster all the time, and the brain isn't being fed properly. And then over time, then that creates, the setup for these dementia diseases. So, women's health, I think, is really being very severely impacted. And I think that the power lies within each and every woman to start making different choices, which can at the beginning feel a little difficult because the choices we make are what let us feel kind of comfortable and able to kind of maintain the status quo in the moment. But the long term effect is really, really negative. So I think that, vibrant health and longevity without, chronic disease, without Alzheimer's or dementia, without all of these things, thyroid problems that are an all-time high, all of these things, it's like I can't even remember what it is, but it's something like almost 50% of women past menopause end up with a thyroid problem. That's not normal, right? But there's ways that we can absolutely prevent that. It really takes a woman deciding, you know what, I have a vision of my future self. Maybe she's like 80 or 90 and she's vibrant and healthy. And that future version of me is cheering me on and asking me to make the best choices for me today so that I can reach that future vision of myself. So, I am really concerned about the state of health for women. And I 100% believe that it doesn't have to be this way, but it takes women to actually say yes to themselves, like truly say
Well,
yes to themselves.
but I also question the whole medical system because um, I know doctors on both sides, and they're like, we're not taught nutrition, we're not taught, we're not taught about women's health really, we're not taught about bedside manner. We're like, right? And it's like, so if you're not taught about 50% of the population, you're not taught to talk to them as a human, and it just drives me nuts as you go into a doctor's office now. It doesn't matter, like I've gone in a few. One question per visit.
Hmm.
You're really going to understand your patient with one question? Like, don't waste my time. And
Yeah, I don't know if you want to get me started on our Canadian medical system
it's
because,
not the Canadian, it's all of it.
yeah,
I hear the same complaints in England, in
sure.
Ireland, in Australia. Like, I'm just grateful our one question doesn't cost us $400 like it does in the US.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And even like I don't know if you guys have this in BC, but we have the helpline, right? We can call and get a doctor, a nurse, or whoever on the call, and then they can say, "I'd be calling the ambulance. I'd be going into your doctor. Yeah, just take a couple Tylenol." Right? That frees up our doctors and our healthcare system, but it still doesn't mean we have enough doctors.
No, no. And the quality of care has really, really diminished.
Right? Yeah, because I
Yeah.
mean, we can't keep up with how many people are coming into Canada or Alberta or BC. It's like, you know, and then on top of it, you say, "Well, I don't really like my doctor," but you're stuck with them. You can't change doctors.
Oh no, I know. I haven't had a doctor in years. My last doctor fired me because I called him out on his atrocious behavior with my daughter, and so he fired me. So I haven't had a doctor in about 4 or 5 years.
Interesting.
That's all I'll say.
That's
But
okay.
yeah,
Well, I assume I had one doctor who fired me because they never returned my calls. Like
mm,
whether it's staff changes, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm fired from them. I said, okay, well, I guess I don't need them. And then my favoriteest doctor um, decided that she was going back to Ontario. I'm like, you're leaving me? And she goes, I'll get you the right doctor. So she gave me to her friend in the same clinic, and we butt heads. Like she doesn't hear
mhm,
anything I say, and I'm like, whatever. So I technically have one, but I don't go to her.
yeah.
Because there's no point, like, if you're just going to put me on drugs, I'm not coming back. I don't take drugs, right? And and like how you said about like you shouldn't be having thyroid issues. I've never not known my body to not have thyroid issues. But I'm wondering how much my thyroid is affected with my voice. Maybe that's a question for you because I never had a voice,
Hmm.
right? And then I'm like, oh, now I've thyroid issues, and I still don't have a voice. Like, but I'm getting a voice, right? So I'm
Yeah.
doing a podcast. I'm finding my voice. So maybe it's gonna go away. I don't know.
It is certainly going to help. And so you're absolutely right. The thyroid is very much connected to our voice and speaking our truth. And, there's when we're not able to do that, we create an energetic blockage.
Hmm.
We talked earlier about, not everything is in the material world. The energetic world is just as important. And
Hmm.
so there absolutely is a correlation between not really feeling empowered to speak our truth and use our voice effectively and thyroid issues 100%.
Well, and here's another thought because I've done the psychosomatic journey, and you think about your thyroid, it is the gatekeeper for your brain to connect to all your organs. So if your gatekeeper is sick or under functioning or blocked energetically, whatever, how is your body and brain talking to each other? They're
Mm-hmm.
not,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you say about, dimension, and it's like, well, if women have gone over, like, let's just do that last 100, because that's my frame of reference, right? If they haven't had a voice and they've had to be the good, dutiful wife, well, no wonder they all have dementia because they're all probably having thyroid issues, which shutting down the brain and the body from communicating,
Yeah.
right? And so I do work with dementia patients, and it's funny because I went to see this one who I don't I question if she even knows her name some days, right? Like, and I went in to see her around Christmas time, and I said, "Okay, I want a new story." She goes, "I don't have any stories." I said, "You do." I said, "I want to know your favorite Christmas." It wasn't in this lifetime. Like, I know her backstory. I know, like, her family. I know where she grew up. And I'm like, "Where are we?" And she goes, "I'm telling you the story." I said, "In what time?" It was 1800s. And I said, "Okay, I'm paying attention." Right? And I thought, this is fascinating. So maybe she doesn't know her name, but she could replay that story like it was current. And that's kind of why I took like, I only do it like casual, like whenever I can fit it in, but it's helping me understand working with clients. Okay, where's the pain really? You say it's your shoulder, but let's go deeper, right? Maybe they got bow and arrow there. Like, who knows? Like, it's just the craziest stuff comes up. But I follow it because it's being brought up in the body because the body remembers.
Oh,
The
absolutely.
emotion is still stuck in the shoulder or wherever, right? And I even learned something the other day, like, um, about astrology. And it says, don't go for the knee operation. Figure out where Saturn is playing in your chart because Saturn rules the knees. And I went, what? I haven't gotten very far on that yet. But I'm like, how interesting. So you're thinking, oh, you're doing the stairmaster, you can't really do the stairmaster, but maybe Saturn's doing something in your chart. Get off the stairmaster, go swimming, or like, do something else, do some yoga. That's not so hard on your knees because Saturn is something doing something in your chart. I don't know. But it's all connected, right? Like, and I even think of your background, right? And I'm seeing this, like, it's just tapestry, all connections. And I think about the saying of how does how does the bird trust the branch not to break? Because he trusts his wings to fly. If the branch breaks, he just flies. Let's go to the branch. But if the branch stays, he can stay and have a little rest.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where we put it. Where are we putting our trust in? The outside world? Or are we trusting in our inner world? Yeah.
That's beautiful. I actually have never heard that saying, but it's so powerful.
Oh, the bird?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean it's whether Rumi says it or Eckhart Tolle, is that so, right? Like Rumi saying, well, the farmer gets this and the farmer gets takes that and right? And you're like, the farmer just says, I'm here. I have a son. We need a horse. We got a horse. The runs away. This, right? Like he doesn't make a big deal of it. And I mean, farmers today say the same thing. Well, we need some rain. We'll trust we'll get the rain. If we don't get the rain, we'll figure something else out. But we keep on trying to figure it all out, figuring out the how, which is none of our business,
Hmm.
right? And it's learning to trust in the flow of the inner wisdom.
Well, I think that's a real consequence of this separation from the body. That so our trust really comes from like a feeling, an inner knowing in our body, which then, that's the body mind speaking, and then the mind translates and thinks it's the mind always thinks it's, the one in control and knows everything. But because our society is so focused on thought and, linear thinking and rationality, we've lost this capacity to innately trust our bodies. And so we miss so much of the guidance. So that's so much of the embodiment work is really, it's like, how do you come back and first learn how to listen,
Hmm.
and then take that listening and then use that in your life. It's so
Hmm.
important.
Well, and I think now that we're moving into the year of the fire horse, um, it's the inner wisdom that we have to all come back to because the next 20 years are all fire signs,
Yeah.
right? It is watching the things that do not work anymore crumble as we emerge out of the fire, right? Like the true phoenix rising. And um I'm just like I'm so excited for this year. I was hoping it was coming last year in July, but I had to be patient. But it's also time is irrelevant because um if you're not getting confused at what day it is, something's wrong.
Well, that's
Because
been happening for a while.
no, I know, but they're saying instead of linear, it's going circle, and you
Sure.
should
Yeah.
be confused. And
Yeah.
and when I heard that, I was like, what? And then I was like, oh, but that does make sense, right? Because yeah, we have our calendars to keep us straight, but then on the other hand, it's like, well, let's just go in the circle and see where we end up. Put the phone down, like turn off everything and go within and see what the messages really are coming. And that's been my biggest lesson, especially coming out of the holidays, was just like, you haven't been spending too much time within,
Mm.
right? Because I've been focusing on the holidays, the outside, and my body's screaming at me, come within. And so what does it do? It blew out
Yeah.
in anger because I wasn't going within. And, year of the snake, let it go. Like, however it has to go, right? So, um, yeah, so it's interesting. So, who's your ideal client? Obviously, women 40 plus.
Hmm.
Can you do anywhere in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I work with women
Okay.
anywhere in the world. Um, my ideal client is a woman who is perhaps just really struggling navigating perimenopause, ready to start feeling better in her body, wanting to make a connection with her body in a way that maybe she used to have and lost, but and would like to get back, or maybe has never had. A lot of women I work with, I'm really supporting them to step into, what I believe is the most powerful time in a woman's life is, when she comes into her wise woman.
Yeah.
And even though, our culture doesn't really tells women that, we're kind of washed up and our best years are over, I don't believe that that's true at all. And so I think so many women have a deep inner knowing that there's something really powerful that is, waiting for them, but they're not quite sure how to get there. And so the women I work with, I'm really supporting them to step into that most authentic and empowered version of themselves.
Well, and in the native in the native community, they're called the wisdom keepers
Mm-hmm.
because it's like you have the child who becomes a woman when they start menstruating, and then they're, the bearing years, and then as they go into menopause, they now shift into the elders and the wisdom keepers and the truth holders. And I think um, we've gotten so busy and fast that we've forgotten to keep the traditions, right? And I even um, remember reading somewhere, it's like, what's with all the tattoos and piercings? Because we've given away our rites of passage,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was like, interesting. And so as a joke, I was at a party at the before Christmas, and someone came up to me and said, "Are you a virgin?" And I go, "Pardon?" Right? And he starts laughing. He goes, "Well, I'm a virgin." And I go, "A virgin in what?" Right? And he goes, "No tattoos, no piercing on this body." And so I said, "That's a funny icebreaker." Right? Because I was like, "What are you talking about?" And so it's true. There's not too many virgins out there anymore that are not being all pierced up and tattooed up, right? Not that I don't appreciate the art. I so appreciate it. Anyways, but it was just funny. Um, Now I lost my train of thought. So yeah, so I'll have everything to get a hold of you in the show notes. Um, if this podcast is resonating, whoever is listening, please contact Carla. And how would you want to sum up who you are, how you came to who you're being,
Mm,
you know, as we bring the show to a close?
sure. So, I like to call myself a midlife alchemist. And the reason I call myself that is, throughout time, alchemy was this, um, we'll say, quote, science to turn base metals into gold. So to
Mm.
turn something that was not remarkable into something extraordinary. And I really feel like you just talked about rites of passage. They're so important. And I 100% agree with you that they're very much missing in our modern life. And we subconsciously crave them. They're important markers. They allow us to really step over a threshold and step into something new with momentum. And it's almost like, the some inner knowing or wisdom gets triggered as a result of those rites of passage. And I think that a lot of us are craving those experiences, but we don't really know what they are,
Mm-hmm.
or how to do them. And so, in my work as the midlife alchemist, is midlife is a rite of passage. It's a
Mm-hmm.
rite of passage into your wise woman, into that revered elder, and that's a long process, perhaps. But midlife is the precipice that takes you there, and so it's not to say that your life pre midlife hasn't been remarkable. It's been remarkable in so many ways, but it moves towards something extraordinary. And
Mm-hmm.
so my role is to support you in the stepping into that extraordinary life. So that's kind of how I would summarize what I do. And I
Oh,
do
that's
that using
cool.
science and the mystical, and all the things in between.
Well, and this really is interesting because for so many of us, you couldn't say those two words in the same sentence. You couldn't say science and mystical or Christian and mix. And I'm like, why not? It's bringing all of our parts into wholeness.
Yeah.
We're not just a scientist. We're not just mystical. We're just not a woman. We're just not like leave the labels behind and be your whole self. Stand in the truth of who you are, the being that accepted the meat suit. I had to start calling it a meat suit because it's like people are getting too hung up on death as an ending,
Mm.
and I'm like changing suits,
Yeah.
like, right? Like you can't be ecstatic about the birth of the baby, whatever baby, right? And then be sad that the person's going because you were ecstatic when the baby. They grabbed his suit. Now they're letting the suit go,
Mm.
right? And I think, um, in my perspective, I won't speak for everybody, is that's what we've lost in the busyness of life. We've lost the actual circle of life.
Mm.
Everything comes in for a reason, everything leaves for a reason. It's here to transform and mold us to who we're supposed to be. But we're still just a blip in the bigger picture. And we just got to show up as our best authentic self in this blip. So, anyways, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, Carla.
Thank you, Adele. It's been really nice having this chat together.
Yeah. And please like, subscribe, share, leave your comments. If you like this show, you want to reach Carla, everything will be in the show notes. If you want to know about more about what I do with transition clarity, everything will be in the show notes. Until next time, this has been an authentic conversation. What a fascinating conversation with Carla. And it's so true. Like we have to work with both sides, all information, all networks to do the best for our bodies and our state of mind. And if anything resonated in the show for you and you feel like Carla would be a help for you, then give her a call. And I did hear that possibly a retreat's coming in November, so stay tuned and follow her. Also, just want to mention that if you're interested in working with me, I primarily work with men, but I'm more than happy to work with the women to let go of the conditioning, the musts, the shoulds. You can't have a voice, all that stuff. It is now time to look inward to the gifts we were born with, the blueprint that we know we're supposed to do, and to shine our light. Once again, this is an authentic conversation. I'm your host, Adele Bernard. Check out the show notes for all information to contact any of the guests or myself. And if you think we could help, we're always willing to have a call. Until next time.